Hello and welcome to this episode of the Healthy Business Podcast. Today I have a wonderful guest. I have Lisa Wynn, who is a master certified coach and human design coach. And she specialises in working with changemakers, social entrepreneurs, global charities and aid agencies, corporations, and more. And she is a bit of a travel lover like myself and has been to all sorts of different places, around 50 countries, studied cultures around the world, which is just amazing and something that I know you will learn a lot from listening to. And her love of learning has led her to study coaching, Eastern philosophies, mostly in the Far East, energetics, emotional intelligence, somatics, and a lot more. And she brings all of this to her coaching as well as her human design work. What an amazing intro. What an amazing lady. What an amazing amount of experience. Lisa, welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's so nice hearing yourself being introduced, and you sort of forget that you wrote it mostly.
Yeah.
But I'll take it anyway. My mother used to say, never believe your own press, darling.
I think it's funny though, isn't it? When we start, when you're asked to do an intro or a bio or something, and then you start trying to almost cram all of your experience into what is essentially a few sentences, and then you realize how much you actually have achieved or how much you have done, which is almost what we're going to be talking about today, of kind of legacy creation. But before we get into that, so the one question that I ask all of my guests is, what does a healthy business mean to you? And you can take this in any form you like.
I love this question. I mean, I actually come from a health background. My first career was as a physiotherapist. So health has always been something that's just important for me. The work that I did, the learning that I had as a physiotherapist actually sits underneath everything that I do still. So I'm really up for this. So for me, a healthy business is one that is healthy for you as the business owner, that is healthy for everybody that you sell to, because that's what businesses are for, right? That it provides a level of health to everyone who buys into it, but also everyone who works for it, and also for the planet. So, as you say, I work with game changers, I work with change makers, and I'm so used to working with people whose mission comes before their own health and really helping them to shift that. So I've worked with organizations, for instance, like Save the Children, and it's really hard to take your lunch break when the children are starving. So for me, that healthy business is it's sort of health becomes holographic. Everywhere you look, everyone is more healthy in every way.
I love that. What a great description, and brings in all of your different experience from around the world and the different cultures that you've been involved in. And we will talk a little bit about that as well. So obviously legacy creation is something that kind of leads in from that healthy business, especially from a charitable perspective. People think about legacy of something that they're going to, leave. But actually you have to create something, don't you, before you can leave anything. So I'd love to kind of delve into legacy creation, what that means, but also how your experience and kind of how that has led to where you've got to today.
So for me, legacy creation, I think the shift is around living your legacy rather than leaving it. So in legacy creation, in the legacy creation framework, we talk about sort of preparing to create a legacy. Lots of us actually are so busy just on the hamster wheel of life that actually even thinking about leaving a legacy seems so far off. So sometimes people are coming from a point of view of, I know I really want to make a difference. I don't know what that difference is. And you can hear in their voice they're already frenetic. And it's, calm down, yourself first. So it's always your world first. Let's get you to a space where you can actually sustain this, where you are healthy, where your relationships are healthy, where your finances are healthy. Because if your finances aren't healthy, nothing's going to be sustainable in all this. Even the aid agencies and things I've worked with, they have to have their financial stability in place before they can go and do all their magic. I mean, you can't, just because somebody's volunteering doesn't mean it's free to send them where they're going. So there's this, first of all, preparing to even consider having a legacy. And then there's the once you really feel that you're in the right space, that you can conceive of that, then what is your legacy? So then we talk about launching your legacy. So understanding what is the difference you want to make in the world. And for many people, there's so many things they want to do that actually taking a deep breath and choosing one, focusing, it's really a big thing. And then we create strategy. We bring everything that we know about online business, face-to-face business, bring pure entrepreneurship into the space where we're actually creating a business that makes a difference. And then what does it mean to launch that, to get that up and running? And then it's about leading your legacy. So as your legacy grows, so you have to grow your self-care. You have to build your boundaries. You have to develop your self-image, who you are. You have to develop your ability to hold wealth. Because if your ability to hold wealth isn't growing, but your business is, then it's going to implode. So there's this whole journey which is all about living your legacy, not working like a dog, saving your money and then leaving it to somebody else when you pop off.
And I think that's probably, when people hear that word legacy, that it's almost what you want to be remembered for. But I think what you're saying and what I love is actually, let's think about that backwards and start with what you wanted to create, how you want to help, how you want to have that impact. But let's fit that. Let's live that. We don't have to wait until you've gone. Like, you want to enjoy that. You want to have that legacy should be part of your everyday living, which I think is just brilliant because, it springs a lot to my core values of this sustainability, but also putting you first. Like, it's your life, and you need to be healthy. You need to, do things that enable you to have that impact, to be able to have that legacy, especially if you're running a business, because as you said, you can't have a longer term sustainable business if it's imploding, if it's not cash profitable, if it's not making that money on a consistent basis. And I know a lot of people do struggle when they're such givers and they want to help as many people as possible. And I see this a lot in whatever industry it's in, but I think probably, when we're thinking about health and wellness, or we're thinking about charities, or, thinking about ways that you can give back to people, that almost comes before. And actually, I think it needs to come after, doesn't it? You need to put yourself first to be able to then have that impact, to be able to help. So I love that idea. How do people go about doing that if they are struggling?
I think the first thing is the decision. So sometimes, so occasionally, very rarely, people who don't know me would describe me as a mindset coach. And there is no part of me that is knocking mindset coaching. And I believe that coaching and mindset are absolute key. But it's such a small part, in a way, of what coaching really is. So we would help people to really sort of clear their blocks to having wealth. For instance, sometimes we need to do ancestral healing. We need to look at how have you been programmed from birth and before, the epigenetics of wealth in your family, the self-belief. So people tend to come with this sense of, oh my gosh, can you see what's happening in the world? It's so huge. It's so huge. And they go straight to, I cannot bear to see hungry children in the world. How could I possibly stop children being hungry? Rather than bring it back to, what's the contribution I can make? And what's the contribution I can make given my current resources, including self-belief? And then get started, get doing something, because as you gain momentum, so your self-belief grows, your nervous system learns to hold more. So work a lot on nervous system, we work on strategy, and this is where human design comes in, that everybody's strategy ideally would be set on individual intelligence, not this is my strategy. So we look into you, we look into how you work at your best. What's your way of being with your business in relationship to your business? So there's this beautiful multifaceted like audit or inventory, I guess, of your skills, who you are, what you desire, how you're going to work best. And then what do you need to keep growing your nervous system, your mindset, your self-image, all the things. Yeah.
It's amazing. And that's where it comes back to you first, isn't it? It's understanding you. It's understanding how you can get the most out of you, but your business, but that's not going to damage your health or damage anything that you're trying to create. Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of a story actually, of a client that I used to work with who was so keen on supporting charities, and that's, that was her kind of mission, was to help charities, which was amazing mission. But she'd got into such a rut of just giving away, she was a massage therapist, giving away treatments because that was charitable, rather than kind of going, actually, I need to have a profitable business that actually will enable me to give more back to these charities. And I think, that sort of giving back can happen even more when you are sustainable yourself. So it's almost just reflecting that, looking at how you're putting things out there, your services, your offerings. And we completely remodeled her business, and rather than just giving away treatments, we gave a percentage away of treatments. So she was still able to bring those people in, because what we were finding, those free treatments were not being taken by the people who actually needed them. They were being taken by freebie hunters. And I think it's, whilst that's all well and good, it's, if you want to give back to those charities, it's doing it in a way that doesn't impact your business, that you don't start resenting doing that, or you don't want to stop doing that. So yeah, I love that idea of understanding how you work, how the human design of it all works, creating that business, creating that setup that actually enables you to start, sharing that wealth, or using it in a way that is going to have an impact without impacting you negatively.
It's definitely, for me, this is the distinction between a change maker and a game changer. So change makers tend to be heart-centered. They want to keep giving of themselves. And whereas what I'm really an advocate for is game changing, is evolving the paradigm of change making. I want people to look at my life and say, my word, if changing the world is that much fun, I'm in. We see change making as, because it is usually, it's about sort of wearing a hair shirt and denying yourself and being exhausted. And it's really unhelpful. I mean, of course, it helps individuals, but you're really limited then to what you can give with your resources.
There is a capacity limit, isn't there?
Yeah, it's like it's wonderful and it's limited. What I want to be able to do is create a movement. If I create a movement, then everything is much bigger than me. And things are happening that I couldn't possibly plan for on my own. And then eventually you get to this space where hopefully one day we'll just have a shift in the human collective consciousness, where people will just know that other human beings matter as much as they do, not more, not less, but that we all really matter. Everybody looks after each other. And then we can all just, go and drink pina coladas, and we don't have to worry about changing the world at all. But for now, I think probably that's a little way off.
I love it. I love that aspiration. But I think there is something in that about creating that ripple effect and bringing people along with you. And you don't have to do it on your own. It's that wider piece, isn't it? That when you start making some changes, when you start, having that impact in the ways that you can do, but bringing people along with you to help you do that, that's when that kind of real shift comes, that real ripple effect happens as well.
And when we start to get creative with money, for instance, with wealth, with how we're using our time, how we're using our wellness, that we start to really learn. This is actually deep in my human design, the use of power and energy for the tribe. So for me, for instance, there's a term that I'm using more and more, which is about multiple streams of impact. So when I'm earning money, I'm a single woman with a mortgage. So some of my money has to go to the mortgage company, but I've chosen my mortgage provider in a way that I know what they're up to in the world. My pension is paid, it goes into an ethical fund.
Mm-hmm.
And I have an incredible, Rebecca Robertson, an incredible IFA, who is always looking at that for me and will highlight for me if something is happening. I had an email from her the other day about the Ukraine crisis, telling me, what might be happening around my pension with that. So I know that the money that I'm putting in place to secure my well-being is making a difference in the world and is not making a negative difference in the world. And I can drop my fees dramatically for aid agencies, for instance. I have diversity and inclusion invitation places on my group coaching program for coaches and business social entrepreneurs. So it doesn't cost me any extra time to have them on my group, but it's incredible. So there's so many ways in which we can use our money. There's some of the money goes to I love Kiva, for instance. I don't know if you're familiar. So Kiva, you're lending money constantly at no interest to organizations all over the world that are making a difference. So yeah, we don't have to just slave away, giving our time away for free to make a bigger difference.
No, I love that. And I had Rebecca on earlier on my podcast. So if you are listening to this and thinking about Rebecca and wanting to kind of hear a bit more about wealth creation and doing that in an ethical way, go check out episode 6, which is with Rebecca Robertson. I think that's such an important point though, isn't it? That's the living the legacy piece. That's the, understanding how you can make an impact, but not just from a financial perspective of you earning that income. It's all the things that you're doing that can help you create a legacy while supporting the things that you're doing in your everyday life. I love that idea.
Totally. When you're buying new clothes, you can look at where they come from and what they're made of, and also who you give the old clothes to and what you do with them. And there are just, if you're a massage therapist, how do you move around? I have very lucky. I have this beautiful hybrid car. And most of the time when I'm cruising around town, I'm not using any petrol at all. And there's just this feeling of how nice it is to be doing that. And it feels divine. I feel really safe. My granddaughter feels super comfortable in it. It's a beautiful car. Somebody told me it looks like a Batmobile, which I think is an exaggeration. But it's doing the best I can for the environment whilst I'm moving around on my own. I could walk more, but that would be walking an awfully long way from where I live to get anywhere. So there's always more you can do, but if you can do it in a way that you adore and that feels really good, that is kind to you, others, and the planet. That's always my question to myself. How could I do this in a way that is kinder, even kinder to myself, to others, and the planet?
So important. It really is. And I think if this is something that you are kind of thinking of as you're listening to this, of how can you make more sustainable choices, it's almost looking at your everyday, isn't it? What are the things that you are doing, spending money on, how you're interacting with people, and anything you can make slightly more sustainable. It really does make a huge difference. And I think that's where the kind of the changes that we can create, that ripple effect, each small effect can have a much bigger impact if more people are doing that. And you've experienced this kind of all around the world. I mean, you've traveled to so many places, you've seen so many different cultures, you've worked with lots of people in different parts of the world, and we've got a very sort of similar kind of fan of Asia, haven't we, of kind of being, you've traveled out there a lot and me living out there for a while as well, and just it's a completely different way of doing things. And I think what I love about what you do is that you bring all of these different cultures and different ways of doing things and bring all of that into how you can support people, because there isn't just one way of doing things. There never will be. So bringing who you are as a person, putting you first and understanding that, as well as exploring, almost opening that Pandora's box of look at all of these other ways that we can do things, or other people are doing things. How can we bring elements of that into our kind of day to day? So yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. I think of just, how do you use some of the different cultural experiences, different ways of doing things, the nuances from different parts of the world, and kind of explore that with clients who, I mean, the majority of my listeners are in the UK, but actually they are pretty global. So it'd be interesting for feedback after this episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts about how you do things in your part of the world as well. But yeah, Lisa, tell us a bit more.
Where to start? I think, the first thing is that is to remember that we are all human beings, and that we are humans and beings, and that the biggest struggle that most of us have in life is forgetting that we have this version of ourselves, this being which is so totally unlimited and can just see everything that they want to create. And then this human that's saying, well, I don't know, because I've only got 2 hands, I've only got this much time, And so I would say a big thing about the way I work is recognizing that, and helping people to unleash the being, unleash the spirit, unleash the soul and the higher self, and then sort of almost help people find a way to work the two together. Like, how does the being learn to work with the human? How does the human be the hands of the being? So there's this a lot of talk online at the moment, particularly lots of people talking about feminine energetics, which I love. It makes me happy. I think the thing to remember though is that energetics, it's like having just the AC or just the DC, right?
Yeah.
The energetics is actually about how do we cope with how do we bring together the yin and the yang. And for instance, there's lots of people who talk about the creativity of the feminine. Well, if we really go to Eastern philosophy, what we see is that the yang, the masculine energy, is actually the sunny side of the mountain. The creativity is that side. That's warm, it's positive, it's exciting, it's creative. And then in the feminine side, we have that dark side of the mountain. It's sort of moist, it's unknown, it's receptive. So the creation happens deep in there, the sort of receptive. If you think about how babies are born, Sarah, if your mum told you yet, that, with that seed of the masculine excitement, and then the receptivity of the feminine side that draws it in and really nurtures and creates. So when we bring that to business, what we're looking at is, what are the ways of being super creative? How do we nurture creativity? How do we create the conditions of that? And then how do we learn to receive? How do we learn to multiply our creativity by being generative, by being creational? So this is one of the reasons I love human design, because in many ways it's pretty masculine dynamic. It's mechanical. But then when you really embody it and you act from it and you live in that way, it really enhances your ability to receive. You take away your resistance to receiving. So there's so much about this, which is about learning to be in the right place at the right time for your legacy, that makes the whole thing so much easier. And then once you've seen the right thing in the right way, having the skill set to do something with it. So for me, it's always about this dance between yin and yang, masculine and feminine. And I'm sure your listeners know it, just to make sure I'm not talking about male and female. I'm really talking about feminine and masculine energetics here. So that's a sort of very big picture. I mean, I could break down forever the how-tos bit, but
yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And I think that's when for me, having lived in different parts of the world, like I've got a real curiosity about different things. I think it's why I started off in marketing, of kind of why people buy different brands, why people are linked to different things, that curiosity. We're all drawn to different things for different reasons. And then my sort of curiosity being broadened from that through travel and through seeing how different people do different things. As you say, we're all human beings, but we do things in such different ways depending on where we are in the world and, you know, what's going on for us and all of that kind of thing. And I think it's just so fascinating that it isn't a case of one size fits all. There is no cookie cutter approach in any part of life. But really getting that clarity, really getting that understanding of you and how you work and the things that light you up, really. And then kind of understanding the hows and how you can actually use that to have that ripple effect, rather than trying to go against something. You know, it's not about trying to, you know, push water up a hill, because that feels really energetically exhausting. And if we can bring that alignment in, then that just totally makes sense. And I guess that probably, you mentioned earlier about people being able to hold on to wealth. And I guess that sort of alignment and understanding all of these things, you know, it can be really easy, can't it? If your business starts growing really quickly, or I don't know, you're doing a big launch and suddenly you get kind of a big influx of money in at a certain time, how do you make sure that that wealth is sustainable, that is stable, you're holding on to it, but also you're utilizing it in the best ways for you and for the impact that you want to create? Does that all come down to human design and kind of energetics as well?
I mean, yes, and the mechanics of wealth creation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Rebecca's, you know, she's one of my best friends. If I don't say that, you know, she's going to. Do you know, it's funny. I'm only teasing. I'm sort of teasing, but it's also true. So, you know, you hear people use the phrase "woo woo," like. I've had it leveled at me as, and interestingly, sometimes as like a put down, and sometimes as a compliment, like, oh, queen of woo woo, or, you know, oh, she's so woo woo. The thing is that really the woo woo is to believe that our spiritual side doesn't have an impact, to believe that if the moon can shift the date on which women have their periods, if it can change the way that the tides work, then to consider that looking at moon cycles is entirely woo-woo is just laughing in the face of science, right? So I love it all. So this morning, for instance, I've spent a few hours tidying up my finances. I had some money that is just not arriving. I've earned it. It's on its way. It's just, you know, it's stuck in the ether. So for me, that's always a sign to say, okay, where am I not being squeaky clean with my finances? So I paid some bills. You know, I had somebody who sent me an invoice and it didn't have the right details on it. And that's, you know, his fault. He sent it badly, but I haven't got around to getting back to him and asking for the right ones. And, you know, and just doing some reconciling, emailing my accountant, the important things that we need to do to show money respect. So those mechanics of money, I think I know are really important. And I coach a lot of people some people who just can't get started earning money, but some people who are already earning a lot of money, like a lot more money than I do, but who don't know how to be with money. They don't know how to hold on to it. And I'm not talking about holding on to it in terms of hoarding it. I'm talking about managing it well, so that you have got the energetic space to decide where to mechanically send the money. Do you want to send it to Kiva? You know, do you want to sponsor women in Africa? Do you want to put it in your pension? Can you afford to put it in your pension? It's nearly the end of the year, you know, so we should all be looking at how much we can, you know, invest where we want to. And I'm not obviously giving any advice on that. That would be completely illegal. So there's all of that. And then there's this nervous center piece, which is when I even think about money, what happens in my nervous system. And there's so much talk at the moment about emotional and nervous system regulation without, I think, a real understanding of that. Obviously, I've come from physiotherapy. That's neuro rehab, and musculoskeletal rehab was my thing for a decade.
Yeah.
And then hear people talking about it. But what happens when you think about what being wealthy? What does that feel like when you put it into your nervous system? There's so many angles on getting wealthy, and I want people who are deeply conscious to get wealthy, because then we're going to magic the world up a bit more.
Yeah. And that's it, isn't it? It's not, I think money is one of those funny things, because I know a lot of people feel guilty about having it when they know that there are people less well off than them, or, that money needs to come in and it needs to go out straight away to charitable things, or in a way that, and I suppose that's almost the not holding on to it, not using it in potentially the best way, but it doesn't need to go straight out as soon as it comes in. It's about using it in a way that helps you to create more for other people as well, and to create more for yourself. And, I know Rebecca's really hot on this of kind of wealth creation, but using your money to create wealth rather than it being you creating that wealth necessarily. It is those multiple impact income streams that enable you to do more with what you've got rather than just earning more. Obviously that helps, because then you can kind of, you're creating more wealth to be able to pass on to different people. But I think there's, these feelings of kind of guilt for talking about money or for talking about being successful. For me, that's that platform that enables you to do more with it. It's not about this kind of, feeling that you have to apologize for being wealthy. And, wealthy, the meaning of wealthy is a whole different conversation probably, because it's not always just about money. But actually, creating something that's sustainable, it goes back to almost what we were talking about right at the beginning of having this sustainability, this impact, this ripple effect, because of your choices of what you're doing at the moment, and the way that you're living, the way that you are utilizing that money, that wealth. But yeah, it's so interesting. I think it's there are so many different facets to it. And I think for some people it could probably feel overwhelming. So if people are thinking, okay, I love the sound of this, I know that I want to have an impact, I know that I want to use the money that I have to create more impact, to help more people. We've talked about kind of getting clarity, but obviously we want to talk about where they can find you, because that's a great place to start. But where do you recommend people kind of going if they're like, oh my goodness, I want to have an impact, everything that's happened over the last couple of years through the pandemic, that's brought different questions up for people, through the Ukraine and Russia situation, that's bringing up questions for people. I know people are feeling guilty about running their businesses or, promoting and marketing. For me, it comes back to, actually, if I can help you market your business and bring more money in, that gives you more choice on how you utilize your money. And I think that becomes an interesting conversation in itself. But how do people kind of get through that, navigate through those kind of judgments with themselves to get started, to start making an impact?
Oh, such a good question. So the first thing is, I'm a coach. I'm always going to say the first thing is awareness, because actually you mentioned the word choice. Most of us aren't really being in conscious choice about it. If you think about it, you go shopping, you buy healthy food, you buy what's on your shopping list, you get to the queue, and then you stick a few Mars bars or whatever it is that's in your, because it's there, right?
Yeah.
And then we feel like we made a choice to buy that chocolate. Now, I'm the last person, I'm not judging anyone for buying chocolate. I have had some chocolate already today. But to look at where either we're not in choice or we don't believe we're in choice. So a lot of us, for instance, we can look to our parents. This is a great place to start. Look at our parents. What did your parents teach you about money, both consciously and unconsciously? My mum definitely taught me that rich people are nasty.
Interesting.
And that they're not happy,
Yep.
that they will almost certainly get divorced, and that no good comes of money in the end. Now, did she ever use those words? Most of them, but not all of them in that way. And sometimes it's by the way that she behaved. If I look to my grandma, to her mother, my grandmother died with having lived as if she had no money, but leaving a lot of money in the bank. And I can look back to how I remember as a kid watching her and my granddad with money and assuming that's what money means, which effectively taught me that you can't trust men with money. You have to look after it yourself. Even though she never said that to me.
Yeah.
And then, so look at what you've been taught. Look at the things that feel like choice to you and look for where they're not choice, they're conditioning. And then what can you start to do to make one small change? Like this is the piece that if we were to do an audit of our nervous system, do an audit of our wealth management, and then say, what's one little thing I could change? And then how do I feel? You'll see it feels completely different very quickly. So these small changes, when they're done consciously, actually really make us much more open to receive very fast.
Mindset is such a huge thing, isn't it? Being open to that, understanding that actually it is limitless. If you're putting yourself out there, you can do it. You can choose how you use it. There is a reason why those Mars bars are at the checkout, because psychologically people pick them up and they just feel like they're making that choice. It's so interesting, having worked in retail, and even just the way each shelf is planned out. It's literally centimeter by centimeter, the planograms that get created, even the ends of shelves, all of that is done with very, very specific metrics, and it's really looked at. So if you are going around and you're looking at your shopping, you might be more conscious of now or aware of what's going on and how the supermarket's trying to get you to spend more money, because that's what their aim is. But it's really interesting, I think, when you put that kind of conscious mind, the unconscious mind, the beliefs that you have, and also, as you said, it's a lot of it comes from that conditioning. What have we been told from different people? What have we seen from family, from friends? How have we grown up, and how has that kind of taught us to make those decisions going forward? I've loved our chat. There's so many different things that have come through from this. I feel like we could carry on talking for so much longer. So many different aspects that I think come through in legacy creation, wealth, holding on to that money, choosing how you have that ripple effect, that impact. Where can people find you if they want to follow you?
Yeah, so my website is lisawynn.com. On Instagram, I'm at Legacy Creation Coach. I have a Facebook group which is launching soon. It's sort of open, so you can request to join, which is called Leading the New Possible. And I'm running a program the end of March, beginning of April, which is going to be completely free, which is called Multiple Streams of Impact. Amazing. So if anyone really feels like they are at the beginning and they don't know how to get started, that would be the perfect way to come and play. Mm-hmm.
Amazing. And you also have your own podcast, the Legacy Creation Podcast, which I was interviewed on fairly recently as well. So go and check that interview out, because that was a great chat. But yeah, you share lots of great tips and things on there too to get started. Lisa, it's been amazing to chat to you. Thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully you listening to this have picked up a few nuggets and have given, I guess, a few suggestive thoughts as to how you could potentially make some changes or become that change maker or that game changer, and really start looking at how you can create your legacy, but also live that in the everyday. Lisa, a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.